Welcome to I Said What I Said, a sports podcast giving you opinions not heard anywhere else. I'm your co-host, Brad Wakai, alongside Tyson Gentry, and we have a special episode today as we have MLB publisher for Sports Illustrated, Kade Kistner, joining us to break down everything in relation to the crazy MLB trade deadline today. First and foremost, Kade, we appreciate you joining us today.
Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. Super excited to be with you.
It's going to be
And
fantastic. This was a wild one for you. I'm sure this is like, when's the last time you put your phone down for like solid 5 minutes straight?
Man, I don't know. Jeff Passing just tweeted. He's like, "All right, trade deadline's over. I've got a date with an ice pack and some extra strength Tylenol." And between our national level site that we've got with Sports Illustrated Media Group, and then the New York market, Philly, Chicago, Houston. It's been a wild last few days, really since like Thursday, but yesterday and today in particular were pretty nutty, to be completely honest. But it was fun.
yeah, it's been a busy one, I feel like, too, Kade. Like, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of teams looking to add. It felt like they were more sellers in a way, or people wanting to buy and like other teams taking advantage of it who weren't very good. I don't know if that was kind of your thought process as well as you were following everything.
Yeah, so there was a lot more buyers this year than there usually are, which make for a really fun deadline. It also make for what I would say like is an early deadline as well. We saw a lot of trades being made, late last week. Lance Lynn, being traded to the Dodgers along with Joe Kelly from the White Sox, right? You can even go as far back as Texas acquiring Aroldis Chapman like almost 3 weeks ago at this point, right? And Max Scherzer, being traded on Saturday evening to the Texas Rangers, right? There wasn't a whole lot on the market, and I think that's good for baseball when you have 20 teams, 21 teams, something like that you can classify as buyers. It kind of drives up the price a little bit. It kind of sees what everyone's kind of made of. So it makes for a really good time, and it really kind of shuffles the deck with some of these teams. Today though was still a really, really active deadline, which is a lot of fun. It's been more active than we've seen in the past couple years, at least.
Yeah, and one thing that I always think it's funny, the big fish, right, was obviously Shohei this year. Everybody was trying to talk themselves into like, oh, where's he going to go? Where's he going to go? And then obviously he doesn't get moved, and it makes people almost act like the trade deadline was underwhelming, even though we had massive names move to contenders, and we have giant payroll teams who are now kind of taking a step back and eye in the future. Is there any like? Do you think those early moves now towards the end of the year, that's what we call sneaky deadline moves, yeah?
Yeah. So obviously the Ohtani thing was big. Everyone had their, proposed Ohtani trades for their favorite teams.
They were all so bad. Every single one I saw was so bad.
Right, but like how do you value a guy like that? And on top, with the Ohtani topic, like I think that the Angels would have been smart in moving him. The likelihood of him re-signing with Anaheim is quite low. There's a lot of teams out there that are going to pursue him, that are going to offer him a ton of money, that are in a better situation to win. But you look at what the Angels did; they went all in because their owner, Arte Moreno, he was looking at selling the team last year, and who knows how long he's going to be in the game, how long he's going to own the Angels, and so he's kind of riding out that Shohei Ohtani gravy train a little bit, right? And keeping them around, money. Yeah, exactly. And so I think it was kind of a disservice to the Angels franchise, long-term to not move them. But yeah, I mean, they ended up being one of the biggest players at the deadline. And like you said, names like Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander, Jordan Montgomery, Lucas Giolito, Aaron Savale, Jordan Hicks. I mean, you name it. There's been so many guys that were moved. And there was a lot of unexpected, things that happened too, like the Mets tearing down, the Yankees being quiet, the Cubs becoming buyers. I think there's, like you said, a lot of sneaky moves that happen that I think are going to kind of change the landscape here down the stretch.
And so let's jump into it because everybody's going to be curious, like, okay, who's the winners of this thing? Like, all right, if I wanted to look at one team who did well here, who do you think came up on top as like the winners of this situation?
Hands down, the Texas Rangers. hands down. Max Scherzer, right? They got Aroldis Chapman earlier. They got Jordan Montgomery, a bit of a lottery ticket, and Chris Stratton. And they did it all without really giving up any of their top 5 prospects. Depending on who you look at, what publication, Luis Angel Acuna could have been, a top 5. But they didn't get rid of any of their top arms, and they got better, and they filled all the holes that they had on their roster for the most part. They got some guys that are coming back from injury. Corey Seager should be back soon, along with Nathan Eovaldi. I think that they won the trade deadline this time around, and right behind them, I would say the Los Angeles Angels, and then the Houston Astros with Verlander and Kimmel Graveman. So the American League West Division really made out here at the deadline.
I love how you put the winners in quotes, right? And one of the questions that I had for you was just like, it's tougher in baseball because in every sport, almost immediately, as soon as there's an NBA trade, we're like, oh, we know that's a winner, that's a loser, wrapped, done. But when you don't get to see these guys, until 2025 in some cases, how do you think that fans, like if you're a Mets fan today, are you like grinding tape on YouTube, or are you just kind of hoping and waiting that one of these guys is going to hit? Because we've been through Pete Crow Armstrong and the rest of the brunch too, and none of it ever we never made it to the finish line.
Yeah, so you make a point. Like I put the winners in quotes, right? Because the Mets won the offseason.
Yes,
I'm talking about, right?
Yes,
and now look
far and away.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like A++ for the Mets in January, right? But in terms of these prospects and what the Mets got back, because they got a really good haul. Drew Gilbert, right, number 68 prospect in baseball, and then the only top 100 prospect the Astros had. And then you look too at who they got in Luis Angel Acuna. These guys are good. Those guys are going to be major league players. Acuna is kind of likened to an Ozzie Albies type. Drew Gilbert is an excellent center fielder. Ryan Clifford is the Astros number 4 prospect. He's in single A right now, 20-year-old, really high ceiling. And so you've got a lot of good stuff. The Mets have a lot of good stuff coming their way. But the way I would kind of phrase it is that, Steve Cohen, right? He has a ton of capital when it comes to money, right? Everyone talks about how rich Steve Cohen is, throwing money left, throwing money right. But what he has lacked is prospect capital, which is just as important of a currency in baseball as actual physical cash is. And so now, Max Scherzer had kind of spilled the beans on Billy Epler and Steve Cohen, saying, hey, they're not going to compete till 2026. Look at them over here. But which means that Verlander and Scherzer really were never a part of those plans anyway. And now, let's say the Mets kind of surprise everyone next year and they start contending and they have a wild card spot. Now the Mets have a prospect capital to come out and now make these trades and be buyers this time next year or down the line. And, the other thing that Mets fans have to realize is that a lot of these prospects that they received at the trade deadline, the likelihood is they'll never take the field for the Mets at the major league level. They're going to be used as trade chips down the line. And so again, it's just more, it's more, but a different type of currency now in Cohen's pockets.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting, and being in the New York market, kind of seeing the philosophy of the Mets fans, right? Like, okay, finally we have an owner who can compete with the Yankees on a financial level, and it felt like immediately they're like, okay, let's just spend as much money as possible. Let's try to build this team. Like, okay, we're here. We're in New York. We're in this market now. And like you said, they didn't have any trade chips that they could do. Like they overspent for Verlander. They overspent for Scherzer. And they're already off the roster in about a year and a half. And now it looks like Steve Cohen's sitting there, and while these baseball guys are telling him, yeah, it's great that you have money, but if you don't have players, it doesn't really matter. And so I'm curious what you think timeline is wise for a Mets fan like Tyson. Like, is this going to be a smart rebuild like we see the Orioles are doing, or is it going to be like, okay, this is just, let's try to get assets and let's go for it next year?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. I think Cohen is realizing that you can't just buy a baseball team, right? And again, won the offseason, but is likely not going to make the playoffs this year. And And so you look at like Verlander, he spent half a season in New York, and now he's right back with the Astros, right? David Robertson, same thing, Tommy Pham, all these guys. So he just didn't really construct a roster properly because, hey, money fixes everything. Well, not really in baseball, right? And so I think Mets fans have a lot to be excited about now because this rebuild or retooling is what I would call it is going to be expedited because of Cohen's cash flow into the team, right? But now you have these assets that you didn't have before. And I mean, you still have Francisco Lindor, right? You still have Kodai Senga. You still have Pete Alonso, right? I mean, like when he comes back, like Edwin Diaz. So you still have these pieces that are fantastic as a foundation for a contender. And so maybe they will, maybe they won't contend in 2024, but come 2025, if they build this team out like a real baseball team and they take the process and they stick with the process, they're going to be a really good team for a long time to come in just a few years.
Well, you might not be able to buy a baseball team, but you can damn sure buy goodwill. When the last ownership group was in a Ponzi scheme and you just show up and start blowing cash, it helps quite a bit. But you talk about the process. Were there any head scratchers from you as far as trade deadline moves where maybe you thought, wow, they think they're good, like they're going for it?
Yeah, I would say that most of the moves make sense. I thought that the Padres and how much they went for it with Rich Hill and G-Man Choi, they just picked up another Scott Barlow from the Royals. There's a couple other like moves, and if you look at them, I think they're only a game better in the wild card standings than the Mets were. Right.
Yeah.
And it's the same exact construction, right? This high dollar, all-star studded team that's underperforming and they're only a game apart. And you have the Mets tearing it down and the Padres pushing their chips in the middle, right? It's a pretty good experiment, and where they could have moved Blake Snell, they could have moved Juan Soto, they could have moved, Hader, right? And all these guys and still had a plethora of stars. I mean, they could have moved Hader at the deadline, and I don't think it would have made them any worse of a team.
Exactly. Yeah, right? I'm with you.
So it's a good experiment to kind of see, okay, hey, what are the long-term effects for both of these teams? Again, I think the Mets did it the right way. The only other head-scratching move I saw was the Arizona Diamondbacks moving Andrew Chafin to, I believe, the Brewers. And so the Diamondbacks were buyers, but then they go off and they sell kind of one of their more important bullpen pieces. But then I also look back and I see that the Mariners traded their closer, Paul Sewell, to the Diamondbacks. So maybe the Arizona Diamondbacks have a below average bullpen unit, as do the Brewers. And Chafin's kind of a below average, reliever when it comes to his ERA plus. So that one was kind of weird to me, but everything else for the most part makes some good sense.
Yeah, I was scratching my head a little bit with the Padres moves, just seeing tweet after tweet from the reporters, just like Padres are buying. It's like I just don't see it at all. It just.
But we need chaos, right? Like
True.
you can't go through a deadline without one of them.
Yeah,
right.
That's fair. That's fair. I was also curious. What did you think about the Baltimore Orioles? Because they have the best record in the American League. Everybody was looking like they clearly need pitching. They got it at the end with Flaherty. But again, like if it's the Padres where the Orioles are, like they're mortgaging their entire future. They may be selling off like stock in their future. And then the Orioles are smart, right? Like they have their farm system. They want to build it this way. They want to build a long-term dynasty. They just don't want to get a cheap one. Like, what did you think about their process?
Yeah, I mean, you look at where they are right now as a team, and there's not a whole lot of holes on that roster, like really at all. And they've got young guys that are stepping up and coming out of the minors and just sitting there, and they're coming up to the majors and they're performing. And that's a big reason, probably the biggest reason why the Orioles are where they are right now. And so, if I'm the Orioles, I'm kind of looking around at the trade market and I'm like, are any of these guys that I want to put on the roster and kind of mortgage part of my potential future for? Because right now at the trade deadline, all the prices are higher. You're paying premium on everything. You're paying a higher price right now than you would in January. And so I think the Orioles were really smart. They went out and got Jack Flaherty, a good veteran guy that's going to slot right into the top of their rotation. Yeah, I thought that maybe they would kind of pull out all the stops for Dylan Cease because,
Mm.
he's under control for a few more years. He's affordable. He's a Cy Young finalist. He kind of fits in with their window of contention. But Cease kind of stayed where he was at with the White Sox. He didn't get moved. And that was also another kind of head scratcher on my end of why the White Sox wouldn't move him. Because I don't see the White Sox contending anytime soon. And so, unless you have designs on extending Cease, I mean, now is the time to strike. And you had a couple good teams there with the Dodgers and the Orioles who were reportedly interested. It's kind of like a Shohei Ohtani thing where you kind of think you should have kind of got, taken what was offered.
Tim
Yeah.
Anderson, I think too.
Yeah, yep. And was it Luis Robert?
Yep.
So, yeah, I think that they could have done a lot more damage at the deadline and kind of expedited their rebuild process too, but they didn't. But that's what the offseason's for too. So kind of have some more time to think about it and kind of see what you got. And they're going to call up some of their young guys and kind of see what they've got here for the last 2 months. So we'll see what the White Sox have.
And you mentioned a point that I think is pretty important when it comes to, like, especially the trade deadline, not just in the MLB, but anywhere. It's like you're paying a premium. Is there anything for like our listeners, kind of maybe more casual fans of baseball, that something that they get wrong at the deadline? Because if you're an Orioles fan, I'm sure like you're pounding the table for like getting somebody huge in here. I'm super excited. We're really good now. But it just kind of makes more sense to not do those things sometimes.
Yeah. I thought that the Yankees actually had a really good trade deadline, and none of the Yankees fans on the last podcast wanted to hear that, right? Because they're averagely mediocre this year, and they're like 3.5 games out of the wild card. So, you don't want to sell off those pieces and fold over 3.5 games. I mean, they've still got 60 games left to play,
Right.
but you also don't want to like mortgage any portion of your potential future or get rid of Harrison Bader, right? Or something like that to bring in another bullpen piece, which they brought in a bullpen piece, but, bring in another bat or something like that. You've already got some big contracts. So, as far as the Orioles go, again, like they're riding high. They look incredible right now. And they have all these young guys waiting in the wings. I mean, that's a valuable asset to have too. If someone goes down with injury or something like that, I mean, you've got these really capable guys ready to go. If I'm an Orioles fan, I'm really happy, with the trade deadline. They really only needed one piece at the deadline, and they went and got him in Jack Flaherty.
And then, we're talking about winners. We're talking about head-scratching moves. Let's move into like your losers. And I would have said you like the Yankees one. Everybody in New York's losing their mind over it, right? Like, what in the world? Like, at least start selling if we're not going to do anything. Like, Cashman's inept, fire Boone. Like, everybody's losing their mind.
Right.
You don't think that's the case, right? And so you actually liked what they did. So who are some losers that you thought were like, what in the world were they doing?
Oh man. So I think probably the biggest loser in my opinion is the Seattle Mariners. They had some, they couldn't decide if they wanted to buy or sell, but they're in a position right now where they don't have really don't have a shot at winning the American League West now, especially as the deadline has passed and you see how Texas, Houston, and Los Angeles have all gotten better, right? And then you look too at the AL and how competitive the AL East is. So really, there's no shot at a wild card either. So the only way their options, they weren't like the Yankees. They're not in a position to just kind of sit pat. They need to either sell and kind of redo this thing because they have a lot of good young pieces like Logan Gilbert and Bryce Miller, or they needed to go out and they needed to buy. And Logan Gilbert, could have been on the trade block. Teoscar Hernandez. They did end up selling their closer, Paul Sewell, but I think that they really missed the bus. They really missed the mark. I would say that they're the biggest losers. Along with the St. Louis Cardinals, they had all these trade chips, right? That they didn't move, and they moved quite a few. Again, Jordan Montgomery, Chris Stratton, Jack Flaherty. So they did move a couple of guys, but there was a lot more that they could have moved. I mean, even Paul Goldschmidt or even Nolan Arenado, those are franchise-altering players that you would have gotten a franchise-altering return from. So I think that those two, Seattle and St. Louis, were probably some of the bigger losers at the trade deadline.
I think we were losers today because it feels like year over year, there's always something huge that falls apart right at the finish line at the MLB trade deadline. Obviously, I didn't have the luxury maybe that you two had today. I was stuck at my 9 to 5 grinding behind a computer desk, so I wasn't all the way up on it. But that was my read on a lot of things. Was it just kind of felt like things got done today? Was that accurate, or am I missing something?
What do you mean things got done today?
Like
in terms of just teams making moves that,
smoke. A lot of the smoke seemed to come to fruition today. Like there was fire almost every single rumor that we got.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the reporting has been really good this year. In terms of players being linked to teams even back in June, and then some of those things coming to fruition and everything today. It was really spot on. And Brad, works with me, and he was a rock star, pretty much for the last 2 weeks, getting all this stuff. So he's just as up with it as I am. But yeah, the reporting's been great. And again, this was the most fun trade deadline for me since probably 2016, when Jonathan Lucroy was still like the top catcher in baseball, and Carlos Beltran was playing, and that was a fun trade deadline, and it just hasn't really been like this type of deadline for a couple of years. Like I say, all the reporting from all the national guys was really, really good this year. So it was a lot of fun, and there was a lot of hits too, which was good.
We've come a long way from Arson Judge in the summer.
Yeah, or the Oseras this morning. Yeah, the Oseras, the San Diego Oseras.
Oh my
Same
gosh,
guy,
yeah.
John Heyman. God love him.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so there's, like we were saying, there's a ton of movement going on. There's a ton of action. Let's go through this with you, Kade, because I know people want to get your quick takes on this. Let's go through some quick hitters, just like teams who made some moves. Quick thoughts on what you thought about it. I mean, the Rays get Savali. The Rays were off to a hot start. What do you think of their deadline?
Yep, I thought that was pretty good. Aaron Savale. Let's see here. They went out and they made a couple other pretty shrewd moves. I'm trying to look at my notes here, but overall, I liked what the Rays did. I think again they didn't have a ton of holes in their roster. They went out and got their guy. They needed some pitching. Savale is perfect. Tyler Glasnow was really excited about him coming in too. He's Glasnow is a phenomenal pitcher in his own right. So when he's really excited and pumped for this guy coming to the clubhouse, I think that kind of speaks for itself.
And the Dodgers, they kind of got a little screwed over by Eduardo Rodriguez, right? He said, no, I'm not going to LA. So that kind of put a wrench in their system. Overall, it felt like they were very, very quiet. What do you think of theirs?
Yeah, Dodgers were really quiet. Again, they were linked to Erod. They were linked to Dylan Cease. They were linked to Shohei Ohtani a couple weeks ago. Again, I'm looking at the NL West, and I'm not seeing the Giants coming back from 2.5 games and catching them anytime soon. Looking at talent level, I'm not seeing the Diamondbacks doing it. I'm not seeing San Diego 8.5 games back coming and doing that. I think the Dodgers, their plan coming into the season was kind of reset everything. That way they can really make a run at it this winter. Maybe then go get a guy like Ohtani in free agency. I think they're sticking to the plan. And because they're the Dodgers, they're still winning. So I thought that, even though they missed out on a few guys, I don't think that they're really off their pace right now.
Are you getting sick at all of having to read, write, and listen to nonstop Shohei news? And now that it's like not going to stop, now you for sure have it for the next couple of months?
Yeah, because now, right, because starting tomorrow, it's going to be where's Shohei Ohtani going in free agency, and what type of contract is he going to get, right? So it never stops with him. I mean, he's like the biggest celebrity in Japan, and he's one of the biggest sports icons in the United States here. So I get it; it's part of the game, But yeah, and again, Ohtani, I mean, he's the greatest baseball player to ever play the game. So
he's pretty unreal.
Yeah,
it's nice to watch. That's true. I mean, the NL East, you got your 2 cellar dwellers now with the Mets selling everything off, Nationals, selling off what they can. Then you got your 3 guys pushing for it. Braves have been unbelievable. They were quiet. Marlins are super active. Phillies kind of felt middle of the road. What were your thoughts on the 3 buyers?
Yeah, so I'm watching the Phillies and Marlins right now. I thought it was weird how 25 minutes before the first picture for the next game, the Marlins traded their number 3 and number 8 hitter. So that was kind of weird.
Yeah.
Getting rid of Garrett Cooper was really weird. I saw that, kind of did a double take. But yeah, I think the Marlins, I think they improved. They're always a kind of a sneaky tough team. At least they have been for the last couple of years. They really like playing against the Phillies and beating the Phillies, which they're doing right now, 1-0 bottom of the third. Yeah, the Braves kind of sat pat, but again, they're kind of a juggernaut right now in the NL East. They're 11 games up over the Phillies, and then obviously the Phillies. I think that they had an okay deadline. They went out and they got Michael Lorenzen, who was kind of one of the top options on the market. He's going to kind of slog in. He's going to allow the Phillies to run a 6-man rotation here for the first probably 10 or 11 days of August. And then he might go to the bullpen as a long relief guy, or it might send a guy like Christopher Sanchez to the bullpen. So I think that gives them some length. There's been some injuries to the bullpen, so I think Lorenzen was kind of the one-size-fits-all to their pitching issues. And they really didn't have to give up. They didn't have to move Griff McGarry or Micah Bell to get it done. So I think that's a win for the Phillies. And then going out there and getting Rodolfo Castro. Josh Harrison was DFA'd today to make room for Lorenzen. And so Castro comes in as a younger version of Harrison, also from the Pirates, right? So, he's got some promising talent. He's a good bench piece and was acquired for almost nothing. So I think that the Phillies, again, you look at their roster and you go like, how do you improve this bullpen, right? You look at all the names: Craig Kimbrell, Gregory Soto, Sir Anthony Dominguez when he's healthy, Jose Alvarado when he's healthy. I mean, you've got these big names that are already there. And you look at the rotation, and if they're all playing up to their ability, Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Ranger Suarez, Taijuan Walker, Christopher Sanchez has been lights out when he's taken the mound. Now you have Lorenzen. So, and then you look at the offense, and yeah, they wanted a bat, but at the end of the day, these players start playing up to their career numbers. It's gonna be a very good team. I mean, Trey Turner. I mean, if he just performs to his career level, I mean, that's like getting a whole brand new player at the trade deadline. So I thought that all three teams did exactly what they needed to do. I think the Braves probably could have improved a little bit, but again, they didn't really need to,
Yeah, I was surprised by that. And I guess last quick hitter for me here, I think what's going to be the best division race is going to be the NL Central. Cubs are hot. The Brewers, they wanted to go for it. I was surprised, honestly, that the Reds weren't a little bit more aggressive to capitalize on this, but I guess it makes sense a little bit. But, I mean, what do you think of their moves as we get ready for what I think is going to be an awesome race down the stretch?
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun because if you look at the NL Central, the only teams with positive run differentials in that division are the Chicago Cubs with like a plus 46 or 56 or something like that. And then the only other team with a positive run differential is the Cincinnati Reds with a positive 4 run differential, right? So that means the Chicago Cubs have kind of been getting unlucky when it comes to the win-loss column. But lately, you can see the run that they're on, right? And, they're only like 3 games back with wild card, 5 games back from the division league. The Reds didn't really improve or like at all. And then the Milwaukee Brewers only marginally improved. And so I think that division really is up for anyone, and that's going to be a lot of fun going down the stretch. My money's on Milwaukee winning that division, but I think, and I have this written down, I think the Cubs come in and they sneak in that final wild card spot.
That answered my question. I was going to ask who in the NL, because it seems to be an NL thing that are you circling to sneak their way in there and then just pound 100-win team like week 1 of the playoffs.
That's exactly what the Phillies did last year. They snuck their way in and then just cruised through the postseason of the World Series. But yeah, I've got for the NL wild card, I got the Phillies, the Giants, and the Cubs making again.
Phillies, Giants, Cubs. There we go, people. If you like the bet, which we do on the show.
Yes.
What are the odds there? Take a peek at that.
Plus, if it doesn't hit, then you can't even be mad at us. You have to go after Kade, and so we're out of the middle.
Yeah. See you
Exactly.
guys later. Thanks for having me on.
Anything you're curious about, Tyson, yet you want to ask, or anything you think our listeners are curious about that they'd like to ask Kade?
No, I mean, I hit all my questions. I just this was a fantastic day for baseball, I think. And, baseball is generating more clicks on the internet, it seems like to me. As far when's the last time we got a bunch of red social media posts on Instagram, year over year? It seems almost like everyone's familiar with 10 names in baseball, but it feels to me like the game's grown a little bit this year.
Yeah, I mean, you look at attendance; it's up about 10% across the league in-game attendance. I mean, even just for our numbers at Sports Illustrated on the MLB side, I mean, from year over year, from 22 to today, I mean, it was almost 150% increase in viewership, right? And baseball is exciting again. Trade deadline will do that. Again, having more than 2/3 of baseball being buyers, being competitive, being in a postseason race. I look at last year, even after they expanded the playoffs. I mean, you kind of knew, there's there's 12 playoff spots, and there was 15 teams competing for them. Now you've got 20, 21, even 22 teams that really could feasibly make the playoffs. It's just been really good for baseball.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an awesome close to the season, especially with the added wild card, the new rule changes. I think, it's just going to be faster stuff. More people are into it. I think it's going to be a great close, and I hope it continues to build on this awesome deadline. So I think it'd be great for the sport. All right, Kade, we know you've been super busy today. We appreciate you coming on with us. Go ahead and plug your stuff so people can follow you on social and find your work.
Yeah, so you can just find me at Kade Kistner, KadeKistner, on Twitter. And then if you hit up Sports Illustrated, si.com/MLB, and then Phillies, Cubs, Astros, Mets, Yankees, Rangers, whatever you want. And then our national media site is baseballessential.com. And you can check out all of our national level stuff there as well. And Tyson, thanks for letting me on. It was awesome meeting you. Brad, shout out to you, man. Excellent work the last couple of days on covering this deadline. You've been a rock star. It's been tough, and it's been good having you on board. And I'm excited to see where the rest of the season goes here.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the kind words, Kade. No, we really appreciate you coming on with us. Go and check out his work. Follow us on our socials. Follow him on our socials. And then, enjoy the rest of the baseball season. Kade, maybe we'll have you on before the playoffs as well, kind of get everything going and see where we're at.
Sounds good.
Get a nap in, brother. You gotta just go have a beer, whatever you need to do. Go decompress.
I appreciate that. I'm going to.
All right. Thanks, Kade. Have a good one.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, we appreciate you guys watching. I mean, that was great. I mean, Tyson, a lot of interesting stuff there. I mean, for the baseball people out there, this was an interesting day, I think, for a lot who just are fringe fans.
Oh, dude, I mean, that on top of I love baseball guys, right? And you can just tell Kade's a baseball guy, and it's a different level of fandom, I think, being an NFL guy or an NBA guy, and then baseball guys, they know everything, they know it all, and it's a lot of moving pieces. So I understand, if your head was kind of swirling around at home and you've only heard of maybe 10 of the guys that were mentioned throughout that, but now's the time to kind of get into it, start figuring stuff out. If you want to be playing, as far as if we're talking betting stuff, and you haven't been watching a single minute, you got 60 games here to kind of wrap your head around how people look and how they're going into the playoffs. Because again, it's been a league where if you're hot at the right time, you can beat absolutely anybody, and not only beat them, sometimes you can clown absolutely anybody. You can take them down in 5 games in a 7-game series, no sweat. But this is dude, I can't get over the magnitude of the names that were dealt today.
I know
it's almost in every other league. It's always it's Verlander or Scherzer or this guy or that guy, and it's never all 6 of them moved today.
Yeah, a lot of movement, man. I mean, it was crazy. And I think that's the thing with these, and the commissioner, He's not very popular, right? Like Rob Manfred's not the most popular guy. I think we got to give him a little bit of credit for some of the things he's done because these new rule changes have been great for the sport this season.
They're fire. You can watch a baseball game with your buddies at a bar and you're not racking up an insane tab because you're trying to watch the whole thing.
It's great. It's great. The attendance has increased. The extra wild card, it's creating more competitive teams and more competitive races. So that's what we want, right? We want more people involved down the stretch, more fan bases involved, and we're getting that this year in baseball. And it's been awesome. I hope that continues. Go ahead and plug our chalkboard, Tyson, where they can find all of our picks. Like you said, if they haven't been paying attention, we got them covered.
Yes, and Brad for sure has been playing the MLB this season, I think, more than any human being on earth, potentially. It is in the Chalkboard app. It is on the App Store. It's in Google Play. Group name is the Roundtable Bets, ISWIS : the Roundtable Bets there, but Roundtable will get you right where you need to be. It's Brad, myself, and a handful of others just throwing picks down on anything from baseball to table tennis and everything in between. And it's not just us in there talking, like, talk some shit with us. That's all we're really in it for. Throw down your fun parlay because it's fun to hit. It's better to hit with friends.
Exactly. So go ahead and follow Kade. Again, thank you very much to Kade Kistner. Go ahead and follow all his work. Make sure to stay connected with us on our social media pages as well. ISWIS_pod is the tag. We'll be back with more football breakdowns. We got more NFL rankings. We got another college football conference preview as well. So stay tuned to that. We appreciate you guys listening, and we'll talk to you then. Peace.